a moment, how do we perceive ourselves? Let me show you my example. This is how people see me superficially. And this is how my friends see me. And this is how I see myself. As a bonus, this is how I used to see myself. A little dark and negative, but that's just the past. We have to take a different route from traditional introspection and understand the question of how do we approach ourselves from the eyes of others. Know thyself. It's pretty cliche, but there's a great philosophy behind it. Socrates said to know who you are to understand the universe, and I mean, it's really important to know who you are, but my question is, how do we know ourselves? As I told you before, we have to take a different route from traditional introspection and understand the question of how do we approach ourselves from the eyes of others. It's a bit ironic, but before you get too confused, let me show you how humans form relationships, social relationships to be specific. We as humans have the nature to divide our society in two different groups, the in-group and out-group. This is basically what the two groups would look like. The group to which you socially identify with and the group outside your circle. The social psychologist Henry Touchville developed the social identity theory to describe this nature. And we can be divided based on a lot of different things. Music taste, friend groups, age, gender, culture, among others. And in this case, you would be my out group. But don't take it too personally. I'm as well your out group if we're talking about our ethnicity. So, what I want to tell you here is that there's an overlap between the two groups. And when you start seeing yourself from the eyes of others, you start seeing yourself in an interesting way. And there's a bridge between that gap. And you have to see yourself from the eyes of others. So back to the question of how do we know ourselves. My first step to answer the question was to step out of my comfort zone, my usual space and my usual people. In case you didn't know, I'm Korean. But something unusual about myself is that I've had this fear of my own people for a pretty long time. I moved to Mexico when I was 4, and I've only visited my home country 3 times while living here for about 15 years. My first 2 times were in elementary school, 2nd and 3rd grade. And my 3rd time was not long ago. It was in last summer of 2022. So in those 8 years that I didn't visit my country, I developed this fear. And now that we have great access to the internet, the media was showing me all the negative things about my country. Politics, school, bullying, world's highest suicidal rates. Everything added up to the reasons why I didn't want to go back to Korea. I did my best to avoid visiting until my last summer before senior year. I actually packed my bags 1 or 2 days before leaving because I thought I could avoid going by not getting ready, but I had to leave. The airplane was just the start. The TV screen was in Korean, the flight attendants were Koreans, everything was in Korean. And I stepped out of the plane and faced my reality. An airport full of Korean-speaking Koreans in Korea. It was a nightmare for me. Quickly, I accepted that I had to stay there for 2 months to prepare for college and that I had no other choice than to adapt to this terror. I started realizing how much the country had changed from the last time I visited, and how different it was from what I saw in the media. The country was the definition of innovation. No one used cash, and every single store had a kiosk machine to take my orders. Everything was linked to modern technology, and I felt like a total stranger, someone who didn't belong there. And I felt like I was stuck in the past. Even people were different. They were friendly. But to be honest, a little different from what I explained earlier with my fears, I adapted pretty quickly and made about 50 new friends in those 2 months I stayed there. And it was in study academies where I met people from all around the world, Korean students specifically from all around the world, and they showed me that Korea was open after all. I accepted that my past was what kept the fears in me, and that I had to let go of them to meet new people. You will get the opportunity to experience something new only if you step out of your comfort zone. You have to accept changes. If you stick to your past, you'll stay in your past. I mean, I get it. It's easier to stay in your cozy bed than to go outside and face the world, but your surroundings are changing, and you have to accept change. There's a flow you can't avoid. So, after having the idea that you have to be open to changes, there's another thing you have to consider. You have to see yourself through the eyes of others, but preferably not of close people. I mean, ask yourself, how well do your friends know you? How well does your family know you? And how well do you know yourself? I'm sure you'll say that they know you pretty well, but let me assure you one thing. There are things about you that you nor any of your friends will notice, because number one, you can't see yourself, and number two, they've seen you for too long that they're numb about these features. So here comes the need to see yourself through other people's eyes. New eyes, but not just any eyes, the eyes. I'm still young, but I was much younger when I did not know about this. It takes back to maybe 10th grade. We were all in quarantine because of the pandemic, and I personally had too much time to think, and I started overthinking back then. So I had too much time to reflect on my life that everything started to seem off. My friendships, my academic life, my health, everything started to seem off. So I kept myself hidden for that whole year until we returned to school in person. But I actually stayed a few months home learning virtually because I was just afraid of going back to normality. But my real turning point came when I returned to school. Everyone was very well adapted to the new environment, everyone except me. And I felt like a total stranger even after spending my whole life there. I was getting stressed with the workload and the social life I had to have back. And this social life was giving me an urge to vomit. I remember going home with that feeling the first week coming back to school. And I remained in that low condition for a few weeks until I sat down to talk to a teacher. I actually didn't know them well, but the moment I started talking to them, I just felt that they were my right person. I talked to them about how stressed I was with school, with friends, with everything in life until they stopped me saying, I understand all those things that make you angry and sad, but what makes you happy? Do you love yourself? At that moment, my mind stopped functioning. I never asked what I liked, if I loved myself, or who I even was. I mean, I had good grades, good friends, a good family, good life. Everything seemed good. Who was I to ask for more? So, I was giving myself those questions, and I remained in that really low condition, and this teacher gave me a homework. Yes, on top of all those assignments that are stressing me out already. And this homework was to make a list of 10 things I love about myself. I'm not going to lie, I still haven't finished this list yet, but I'll do so soon. So this teacher pushed me to love myself, and guess what? I started to love myself. And I guess I needed that little push. And this happened thanks to all the good things they told me often. They complimented on my consistency, my curiosity, my kind heart, my intelligence, all those things that not many notice. So, finding the right person might seem difficult. I mean, it took me years to find this teacher, but they'll come in your life in an unexpected moment and you'll feel that right away. Finding the right person is like finding that one word you couldn't remember to complete your essay, that missing piece to finish your puzzle. Find your third eye, the eye of the right person to picture your identity. These right people will find what you can't see about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and ways to pull out that inner self that is hiding from others. Related to my experience in Korea, I met another teacher, another right person after opening my mind. And they helped me accept my weaknesses, and of course, ways to convert them to my strengths. So, we had so little in common, but so much connection. Now, they're one of my best friends. In case you didn't know, I love to share my life with others. And every time I did this with this teacher, they noticed all the amazing things I did in his story. All those things that I didn't notice before. And when I did this, I saw myself in an interesting way. Like, if my in-girl was giving me a detailed list of ingredients of myself, the out-girl was now giving me a paper to wrap everything up. So you need that person. You need that person to picture your identity. So, after accepting changes, stepping out of your comfort zone, and seeing yourself through other people's eyes, it's crucial to establish your own standards for future interactions. This right person you meet will not be your mentor forever. You have a life that awaits, and you'll have uncountable experiences with uncountable people. You have to prepare yourself for future interactions. In my case, I differentiate new people I meet into categories: the supportive and non-supportive interaction. The supportive interaction is what I need in my life. Those people who can listen to my stories and connect to them, noticing all those small details, like the teachers I mentioned earlier. Then, I have the non-supportive interaction. This happens with people who take my life in a really light way and don't notice the possible connections we can have. But this does not mean that they're wrong. They're just different from what I need in my life. For example, I met someone to whom I said, "I don't know what to do with my life," and they replied with, "Leave it, what else can you do?" For me, this is a non-supportive interaction, but for another person, it could have been the little push they needed to keep moving forward. When you have a clear standard of what you need, you'll be able to find infinite new eyes, and you can grow from them. So, the 3 steps of finding yourself are: number 1, step out of your comfort zone. Number 2, see yourself through other people's eyes. And number 3, create your own standards for future interactions. Going back to the beginning, what did you find about the social identity theory in my story? I found teachers from different nationalities, and I saw myself through their eyes, the eyes of the outer. I was able to escape the collective identity my social group had about quiet, smart students to my personal identity. I mean, it's unavoidable to differentiate between in-groups and out-groups. But I'm telling you, it's about having a bridge between that gap, going past the limit of your in-group and learning from the out-group. And maybe now, you're asking what finding yourself means. And I believe that every single one of you has a different definition for it. But in my definition, it's about finding the reason for my existence and my uniqueness in this world. What is your definition of finding yourself? Know thyself. Thank you.